Okay. We're rolling.
I have no clue where that cup even came from.
I'm sure there's a really good story in there somewhere that you just aren't aware of.
I think there is, but I've had that glass for, 20 years. 15, 20 years. Speaking of 15 years, congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I know we're not recording yet, but I wanted to say that.
We actually are recording. We're hot. Okay. We're hot. So shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, shit.
What?
I'm
there's more.
I'm pretending like DJ Caleb's house is here.
There's more of that to come.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to ShiftLess, the one, the only podcast that is 1,028.7% bicycles all the time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just bicycles and, well, maybe some food. I did actually see a good movie that I liked. We haven't talked movies in a while.
Oh, please tell, because I've been on the search for a decent movie.
I don't know if it'll be up your alley or not, to be honest with you. You may not be old enough for it.
Enough with the teasing.
Saturday Night. The story of the supposed first night of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, I would definitely be interested in that.
Okay.
When I was a child, I used to watch Saturday Night Live, on the regular. But I was also loved Letterman and all that stuff.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You might be too young, because, your idea of Saturday Night Live is probably what?
Chevy Chase and Bill Murray.
Oh, okay. You were into it in the 70s. Well, Eddie Murphy's post those guys, but...
Yeah, as soon as I found Saturday Night Live, I could not get enough. And so I've seen so much of the golden years, if you will.
And it's fictionalized, but I think it's taking anecdotes from basically setting up the first show, and it sets it up like it's what happened. And they try to do it in a live format. It's like a 90-minute movie, and this is like the 90 minutes leading up to the first show sort of thing. But they tie in anecdotes for stuff that obviously didn't happen all right then, but they kind of make it seem like it did.
But the movie is shot live? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it's real time is the structure of the movie. It's not shot live,
Very
but
cool.
It's a pretty cool movie. I enjoyed it more than I expected. So,
speaking of setting up things for the way they are, I started watching American Primeval.
I don't know what that is.
It's all about the expansion into the West, like fighting the Indians, the Native Americans, excuse me. And
depends on who you're talking to.
And just the absolute savagery that was between the Mormons and the Native Americans and the Western or explorers, trying to expand west. It's wild and it's shot really well. There's some incredible scenes, like fight scenes and stuff.
What's the name of this one again?
American Primeval.
Okay, and where's this available?
Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a series, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to watch the first episode and go to bed, and 3 episodes later, I was like, I need to go to bed. So, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this weather.
Okay. You seem to have words you would like to share about it.
It's a gorgeous day.
It is an absolutely fantabulous day.
Warmer than the brochure. No wind. Nice and sunny.
Brisk.
I think it's still in the 30s.
Maybe low 40.
Yeah, you may be right.
Brisk.
It is.
Brisk, but not uncomfortable.
It was cold as poop last night.
Yeah. So says the ice on my windshield this morning.
Yeah, we rode last night. And in true ridiculous fashion, everybody was late. So we didn't end up rolling till like 6:15.
From here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, great, let's just wait till it gets colder.
You know what? There's something about that first cold as soon as the sun goes down, and that last cold just before the sun comes up.
That's the worst one. As a guy that worked through nights in the oil field, like that hour before the sun comes up is just when it gets brutal. especially out in West Texas where there's nothing to protect you. There's something about that wind and this chill that just comes in right before the sun heats it up. It's wild. But we did have a good ride last night. It was probably fortuitous that we delayed for so long because numerous people kept going back to their vehicle and putting on more clothes, more clothes, more clothes. So I think the only thing that anybody really overlooked was gloves. I had extremely warm gloves because I'm a baby when it comes to my hands. And I actually had a backup pair of even warmer gloves that I was planning on wearing on the way home. I always carry more than one pair of gloves, typically when the weather's chilly.
Yep.
Just in case one of them, and if it's going to get colder, I carry warmer gloves, and if it's going to get warmer, I carry cooler gloves, if that makes sense, if I'm saying that right.
No, I follow what you're saying because I'm pretty much the same way because the hand temperature has to be right.
Yeah. And Mr. Malone's sent me a pair of 45 North shoes that he was no longer going to wear. I think he went to flat pedals all the time, and so these are SPD, and I was thinking that they were going to be fantastic. My toes still got cold in them, and they're not too tight, which is what I would have, kind of anticipated is the reason my toes would get cold. But they're not as warm as I anticipated.
And I apologize, I'm not familiar. 45 North, is that like a Lake Winter shoe or something like that?
It's a company. They make a lot of snow equipment for riding. They make full-blown boots. They make pogies. They make. I actually have the warmer gloves I was talking about are 45 North, and these two fingers, pointer and middle, are separate, and then your pinky and ring finger are. It's kind of like a lobster claw situation.
Like
yeah, no, not quite. Not 2 in 1.
Well, you said pointer and
pointer and middle are
and
separate.
Pinky.
Yeah, they're individuals, and then the pinky and ring are together.
Oh, okay.
So
I follow what you're saying.
But they're almost, if it's not low 30s, your hands will sweat in them.
Yeah.
So.
And sweaty hands are almost worse than cold hands.
They definitely are. So anyways, Malone's had heard me talk about warm shoes on one of our podcasts, and he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I have these shoes that I will never wear again, and do you want them?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do. Just tell me how much." And we worked out a deal, and he sent them to me. And I guess, I don't know, they sat in my garage until about a week ago, and then I adjusted the cleats to where I wanted them and went for a test ride, I think last Thursday or something. And I noticed even then, it wasn't that cold on last Thursday. It wasn't ridiculous anyways. And I noticed even then, I was like, man, I don't think my feet are as warm as they should be in such a highfalutin pair of boots. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's a sock situation.
I was going to ask him, what was the sock situation?
I'm wearing hollow socks. They're
I know the hollows. I got some on your recommendation.
Yeah, I like them, but I think this may be the first winter that I've been wearing them. And
I don't think they're winter cycling appropriate.
And maybe they're not as warm as wool. I was contemplating that this morning as I was kind of going over it. So maybe I'm going to try them again. I said all that to say this. I'm going to try them again with some SmartWool socks.
Okay. Let's talk after that.
Yeah, and see if my opinion changes.
Let's talk. Now, but it is somewhat, you said the toes as well.
Yes, it was weird because it was just my big toe and second toe.
So, I mean, is there some kind of ventilation on those shoes?
No, they essentially have... It's a shoe inside of basically call it a shoe cover that's integrated. Basically you have this rubberized wrap that comes from the side, from where the sole attaches to the upper, and it wraps around the shoe, and it has a zipper that goes right up the middle. And on the inside, it almost has like a snowboard boot cinch. It's not laced. I mean, it's laced, but you just pull the laces and then cinch down a tightener. And then that tucks inside this skin that zips up. So I would say no ventilation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It's just it's odd that you did feel it in the toes. At least that's how it strikes me. Because when I did go to those lake boots, that was the one thing I noticed. It was uniform foot temperature all the way around. So
yeah, and I thought, well, I made a observation in real time, like when I'm thinking and I was riding, I'm like, my toes are kind of cold. And then I started thinking, are these shoes too tight? Because a lot of times that'll happen.
If your toes are up against the toe box itself as opposed to enclosed with an air gap.
Yeah, but they weren't.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Let's try some wool socks and talk about it. Talk about it then.
Yeah. Other than that, I was dressed perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So how was it a Denton Ramble type ride last night, or did y'all do something else?
Yeah. We just trying to think. We went gravel bomb on the way there. Across the Corbin crossing, but you can still get across that, by the way.
Okay, good to know.
It's a little bit more technical. I was surprised that there wasn't water running over it, since it's even lower now and all the snow melt that's been going on, but it was dry as a bone. So, and we rode that way. It's weird, where the gate is at the top, how that went back and forth between being open and being closed, and then once they finished doing all that pipe burying, it's been open ever since. So when we went through there yesterday, they had 3 barricades that were bolted into the ground instead of just closing the gate. It didn't make any sense.
You mean like the bollard type barricades?
No,
or
like the ones that they put up that have the horizontal slats that are orange and white that they put up for like road closed?
Yeah.
There was 3 of those, and they're literally bolted into the ground. Like, why didn't you just shut the gate? Seems like a waste of resources.
Maybe it's a jurisdiction sort of thing or something. Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
It was interesting.
Okay.
How was Harmony Hall?
Harmony Hall was awesome.
Yeah.
It was stupendous. The bestest part of it was the weather down there was just simply astounding. And it was on my way down Friday. I left Friday morning because I was definitely wanting to get ahead of the Friday night freeze. Because I needed to mark course on Saturday. And if I tried to leave Saturday morning and everything was frozen over, that could be a debacle, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I was trying to leave Friday morning, but that's when the snow was still I was about to say a foot. That's an exaggeration. 6 inches deep around the house. It was probably 8 inches on the windshield of the truck and over the top of it.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
It took an hour of maybe almost an hour and a half of defrosting and scooping and everything, so I could get the truck out of the driveway. But it was, that was like, that's Tarrant-Denton County line there. And by the time I got to Fort Worth, there was no more snow on the ground.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to Burleson, it's like, it didn't even happen. And then I get down there, and it's like, this is fantastic. The weather was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I saw some footage. I saw Walschmidt put some footage up of the creek crossings and stuff. Or the creek crossing, I guess. I'm not aware if there was multiples. But
there were multiples for those that went the 75 and the 100-mile routes.
Yeah. But the creek crossing looked pretty tame.
Yep.
And the weather, I could tell, it just looked warmer on video.
It was, yeah. So when I was marking course Saturday morning, by 11, it was perfect. And it was even perfecter on Sunday when we had the ride by 11 o'clock. A slight chill at the start, but not bad. Turned into an absolutely gorgeous day. The creek crossing, it was one of those that everyone was like, you're sending us across creek crossings in January. Really? And everybody said the same thing at the end of the day. It's like, that was actually kind of refreshing. Thank you.
Yeah. As long as you're wearing the right socks. But it didn't look like anybody was getting their feet wet in the videos that Rich posted.
I have not seen those videos, so I can't speak to that. I'll have to dig those up. Were they posted on the Book of Faces or on the Gram?
Strava.
Videos on Strava now?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, I don't really pay any attention to Strava, so
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't know.
There's plenty of people to keep it afloat.
I'm not knocking it. I don't pay much attention to Strava. I don't pay much attention to TikTok, but I know they're out there doing their thing. Well, maybe they're not out there doing their thing. That'll be.
TikTok's not. Strava's not run by the Chinese government.
Are you sure of that?
I feel a lot more certain that Strava's more. What's the word? Harmless than TikTok. But they're still probably mapping the world using our tracks.
There's no telling. Strava's gotten people assassinated.
Well, that's true. But that was a weird story. I forgot about that.
But anyway, so that's kind of bike-ish. You rode your bike. We had a cool little event. We don't necessarily have to dig into it now, but I definitely want to extend our conversation where we kind of left off last week, because
I forgot where we left off.
Caleb was pressuring us to get out of there. We were...
I think his exact words were, "Get the fuck out."
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty damn close.
Yeah, I know where I'm not wanted.
He's like, "I got work to do. You guys are just a couple of chuckleheads playing like you're on the radio or
That
something."
poor guy.
I feel sorry for him.
He wishes he was gainfully employed like we are. Where did we leave off?
So,
remind me, please. My aging brain.
No, I understand. I was rolling with the thesis of the bike industry's almost gone out of business a couple times in the past, and what the salvations were the mountain bike in the early 80s when the bike industry almost collapsed then, and then the Lance effect in the early 2000s when the bike industry almost collapsed then. And we are back at a point where the bicycle industry really does seem like it's on the verge of collapse yet again. And I think where the point I was trying to make, and I'm going to blame it on Caleb for giving us the time crunch where I wasn't really able to expound on my thesis. The point I was trying to make was those situations were counter to what the bike industry's been doing to try to survive. Where, like we've said many, many, many times in the past, the bike industry is currently built around the N+1 model. That's how it survives. It takes its small core passionate cyclists and tries to find ways to sell us more bikes or make us think we want more bikes. And
or outdate the equipment we have so where it's not serviceable.
Right. Obsolescence or whatever else.
Yeah.
My point...
I would love to say planned obsolescence, but I don't think the bike industry is that intelligent.
I don't think they have. That's the ding. There is no plan.
Yeah.
Then the point I was trying to make was that both of those situations, the mountain bike and the Lance effect, yes, there was an N+1 factor that started the momentum of those, but it was really... what saved the industry was not the N+1. What saved the industry was the N.
Yeah.
It was, these are new people into cycling, and the mountain bike, the specialized rock hopper, or I guess stump jumper was the first one, right?
Maybe, yeah.
As far as mass market ones. The specialized stump jumper was something that intrigued non-cyclists into cycling.
Yeah.
The Lance effect intrigued non-cyclists into recognizing, oh, hey, there's a viable way for me to get exercise. There's a viable way for me to enjoy the outdoors.
I think, and nobody ever talks about this, but I think, it's almost a generational thing. Like, mountain biking hit in that perfect sweet spot to where when we were kids, bicycles, specifically BMX bikes, were our main source of transportation. You know, you'd ride your bike over to Johnny's house just to watch wrestling or something. And then as soon as we got almost too old for BMX bikes, mountain bikes came along. It's at least in my generation. And it would seem like a natural attraction. It was like, oh, this is the next thing, you know? And so I think that's why mountain bikes became so big, at least amongst my age group.
Well, and then that's kind of what I was talking about. I think what you're referring to was that momentum builder.
Yeah.
Of, you know, the mountain bike took existing cycling passionate people and kept them in the sport. But once that momentum got going, it was drawing in non-cyclists.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference now. And that's where so far the gravel scene, for the most part, while gravel bikes have kept the industry afloat for the past 10 years, it's still more catering to the existing cycling base more so than bringing in outsiders.
Yeah.
And that's the point I was trying to make last week. The cycling industry needs, for it to survive, for it to flourish. I mean, it's going to survive in some capacity or another,
Sure.
but for it to flourish, it needs to find a way to bring in non-cyclists, not just sell more to existing cyclists.
Yeah, and that's so hard for me to, like, even contemplate. Like, I mean, because I got on a bike at 3 years old, and I've never been without a bicycle. You know, and I think the first time that I left my driveway and went to my buddy's house on a bike, I was like, I'm going to ride a bike for the rest of my life. It was, you know, it wasn't like an internal conversation, but it was just like a switch flipped that would never get unflipped.
I mean, and I think you are touching on a factor that maybe I'm there. Yes, that original passion is still, even the people that are non-cyclists that get drawn to cycling as an adult. When I say they're non-cyclists, they're people that haven't ridden a bike since they were a kid, I guess is a better way to say it.
But they get drawn in by the infection, you know. Even non-cyclists, like, there's, you know, for the most part, when they go into a bike shop to look at a bike, there's just something about that bike shop atmosphere. It's almost like being in the cool guys club. You know, you walk in and there's all this new stuff that you're unaware of. And you're like, oh, what is this? Oh, this is cool. You know,
I'm gonna disagree with you.
Really?
I think 90% of the population is put off by that environment.
Really?
The new cyclists, yeah, they're very uncomfortable in that situation.
See,
I don't think they're going to the bike shop to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't know how many people are shopping for their first bike at a bike shop.
And that's kind of my point. The new cyclist is intimidated by the bike shop. I'm thoroughly convinced, and I mean, nothing's 100%, but I would say the majority.
I'm just cut from a different cloth because, like,
that's the understatement of the year.
Well, I mean, like, I'm intrigued by all that stuff. Like, I know nothing about ice climbing and stuff like that, but when I go to REI, I look at that equipment and I'm just like enamored with it. You know, the ice picks and all these, you know, wedges that you stick in cracks that's for traditional climbing and stuff. That stuff intrigues me, and I have no ambition of doing that. But I'm just a gear junkie. I love looking at technical gear, you know, and stuff like that.
When you do chase down a new pursuit, a new hobby, a new recreation, a new thing, what's well, can you think of anything new that you've taken on in the past few years?
I made a new style of pasta yesterday.
That would be an extension of your cooking background,
Yeah.
but what is a new style of pasta?
This is a semolina based pasta instead of a double aught flour and egg based pasta.
Okay.
It's mostly for making shapes, you know, instead of
what shapes did you make? Peanut?
No, I made they're sitting on the counter. I'll show it to you afterwards. I think it's cavatelli. I can't remember. Dude, there's thousands of pasta shapes. But back to your question. I guess, well, I mean, I was going to say bike packing, but bike packing is just an extension of what I was already doing.
Maybe yes, maybe no, but
Yeah.
you know, I follow what you're saying.
I mean, because legitimately, when we started bike packing, there wasn't. I mean, there was already people making bags, but I think Revelate was one of the only names in the game at that point, and there weren't really anybody around us that was doing bike packing. People were touring, which was a different animal. You know, panniers and backpacks and stuff like that. So when we started trying to figure out how to bike pack on single track specifically, you know, it was almost overwhelming, especially because, you know, as soon as you leave the house, the net is gone. Mm-hmm. So that was a little intimidating. And, you know, I had this conversation last night, as a matter of fact. Somebody was reaching out to me that was here on the ride that has zero experience bike packing, has zero bags. And they were like, hey, if I want to outfit my bike for bike packing, where should I start? Like, what do I need to get? And I was like, I felt privileged to be a resource for somebody because I didn't have that person.
Yep.
You know?
Yep, exactly.
And it was honor. It was like an honor.
You're talking my language.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So, you know, I think, I don't know, like I said, I'm just a different person when it comes to embracing the unknown. Like, I'm the guy that'll go down a road and have no clue where it's going to go. I don't care if I'd ride 10 miles and have to turn around, you know. But some people are very hesitant to take that turn if they don't know where it's going to go. So, but back to bike packing, you know, we had to figure stuff out, and it was discussion between like maybe 5 people. And then we slowly figured it out, and you know, now there's a lot more information, there's a lot more manufacturers, there's a lot more products.
There's a lot more marketing speaking, and there's a lot more Facebook page discussion from people that have actually never done it, but
Yeah.
everybody thinks they're an expert because they talk so much.
Yeah. I mean, I've already been on 2 bike packing trips this year.
Look at you. That's pretty damn good.
I'm pretty stoked about that. Well, I guess not this year. I guess the one we did up to Ho Camps was last year, technically. It was in December, I think.
Okay.
Either way.
This winter.
Yeah.
Two bike packing trips this winter already.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty strong.
Yeah.
I think that puts you in the top, up there in the 97th percentile.
I don't know about any of that.
Well, probably for the anyway.
But it was cool for me to, you know, be able to give this guy some information and just kind of put him in a direction. Like, you know, the main thing I told him was, hey, first of all, you know, you need a frame bag. And I said, then you got to figure out, are you a bladder guy or are you a bottle guy? Are you going to go half frame or full frame?
Well, you know what you need before a frame bag, though, don't you?
I don't know.
You need a bike.
Oh, yeah. Well, he already has a bike.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that. But you're touched on what my theory is around the N, not the N+1, the N.
Yeah.
Get people on the bike to begin with and let them find those nuances. I mean, you know, I posed the question to you, what have you taken on new fairly recently? And I mean, that was just spur of the moment. And while you were talking, I was trying to dig deep, going, well, I throw that out there to Brad. Do I have something I can lean on? And then I thought about it. I mean, my closest approximation, quite frankly, is, and we've touched on it before, getting the camper, getting the RV.
I was going to say overlanding for you, like doing more back roads, running and stuff like that, and kind of pushing the limits of your vehicle.
Yeah,
and,
I think there's I think there's some of that, but I already had a fairly strong experience base in the ancillary pieces. It was just a matter of putting it all together in one package. But looking at actual an actual camper that was appropriate for going deciding to go that route and doing the research and going that route.
That's an overwhelming
It
atmosphere too, because
it really is.
You can go from $3,000 to $3 million when it comes to campers.
Right. And and even just trying to figure out what kind of camper is right for me. You know, when we first started looking, we were thinking we were going to get a motorhome.
Yeah.
You know, but we didn't want to do a conversion van.
Yeah.
We were confident we needed something bigger than that, and
because you want to scout and you want to leave your temporary housing and go.
That ended up definitely being part of the equation there. But I mean, I guess when I was first thinking about it, it's like, well, I can get a motorhome and I can pull the Jeep behind me or something potentially. We didn't know. We were starting that research process.
Yeah. That's a daunting realm to get into as well. Yeah. I have one of my buddies that is a cycling blogger, ex-pro, filmer for a lot of cross races and series and stuff. And he got an RV 2 years ago, and he's literally just been doing updates constantly. And I've been reading every one of his, and it's just overwhelming how much stuff that he's had to figure out along the way that he was previously just didn't even know that this was going to be an issue, like weighing and distributing his weight and then camping in cold weather and insulating all his underskirt. And it's just crazy.
We ended up, quite frankly, just getting completely lucky.
Yeah.
That things worked out. I won't say completely lucky. My wife's intuition had a lot to do with it. Yeah. Where she was like,
she's a smart lady.
She is. Yeah. Except for her choice in men.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
But some of her flaws are fairly attractive for me. So, but
you're a lucky man.
Her feedback was integral for us lucking into the right camper for our first camper. Mm-hmm. But now it is, N+1 time for us in that realm. And I'm up against it again because we're both up. We know we need a little more space, but we don't necessarily need a whole lot more features. But everything we look at, it's like, ooh, shiny. That would be a neat thing to have. Yeah. But is it really? Do we need the extra expense? Do we need the extra complexity? Do we need the extra weight? Or whatever else sort of thing. So it is an ongoing process. And quite frankly, what you were touching on. When you said you felt honored that somebody reached out to you and asked for your advice on things like that, quite frankly, that's where, we went down that endless YouTube hole of finding content providers that we believed what they said. They weren't just there, follow my affiliate link and buy this. Yeah. It's... I watched 12 hours of this guy's content over 2 weeks. He's telling the truth. He's saying what he means. We may disagree on stuff, but
that's the other thing.
He's genuine.
There's so much more information, period, coming at you all the time. But when you really hone in on anything, Gage, my oldest son, he's a prime example. You're talking about like when you get into something new, what's your avenue? Like the younger generation, and this is all anecdotal because it's based on what I've seen through him, but he's been through so many different hobbies. He's this kid that he sees something, he's like, oh, I want to do that. And then he will go down an absolute rabbit hole, find as much information as he possibly can. Like right now, he's going to the gym every day, every chance he gets. And so he's doing all this research on nutrition and how to gain the best benefits, through different exercises and how many reps and should I do them slow and low weight versus high reps versus high weight and low reps and how to recover and how to oscillate your exercises without incurring injury and fatigue. He's a nerd when it comes to that stuff, and it's admirable because his thirst for information is insatiable. It's so cool.
The thirst is insatiable, but what's so fundamentally different in his world than what ours was is the thirst is insatiable, but it is actually satiable because you can get all that information.
Yeah.
You know, going back to when you touched on, well, you know, Kevin getting into overlanding. And so, like I said, that was a compilation of all this other stuff I've done. When I first started Jeeping, when I got my first Jeep.
Yeah. You're pretty much self-taught.
You're self-taught. It's 2 years of Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road magazine before I find 3 or 4 articles that are relevant to my Jeep.
Yeah.
This is the maximum wheel and tire size I can get for this Jeep, because even the tire shops didn't know that, and there weren't four-wheel drive shops all over the place and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's wild how much information there is out there, and that's what I was going to kind of bring this back around to. Is I think that part of all that information being out there, meaning how much internet activity there is and social media and all of that, I think that's one of the burdens of the cycling industry, is how do you get that new customer on a bike when this thing right here, your phone, captivates the majority of the people. You know, this and your computer and, you know, all the content that you can take in, not to mention how badass video games are now, is one of the kind of holdbacks on people getting out and doing stuff.
And we keep going back to what I truly and I don't know what the solution is yet, but I'll be honest with you, that is my goal, is to work on a solution for this. I'm not saying Kevin and Spinistry are going to save the cycling industry, but I'll give it a hell of a try.
EMPs.
No, not so much.
And shut down the grid, bicycles will be sold like crazy.
The biggest issue the cycling industry has is they're not putting out any message whatsoever that's going to potentially appeal to somebody that isn't considering cycling as an alternative hobby or recreation, or like I've been running more ads this year on Instagram and Facebook for Spinistry stuff that I have in a while. And some of the feedback I'm getting is really interesting, and it's as general as looking for something different.
Yeah.
And
you mean within the cycling community, or as far as they're a non-cyclist and looking to try out cycling?
The latter.
Yeah.
The latter.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message the industry should be sharing. Not to say, hey, you need to be cycling. It's here's something different, and that be the magnet that attracts the people that are looking for something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I think right now, though, the cycling industry is drowning, and, you know, they're waiting for a life preserver. You don't invite people into the water when you're drowning, you know?
Well, I mean, again, going back to what we touched on it today as well. You know me, I am a huge proponent of the bike shop. I do thoroughly believe that the local bike shop, for 90% of the people out there, is the best place to go to get your first bike. But I also recognize that that's not going to be the case. Your first time buyer is going to go to a non-specific retail establishment to get their first bike, their first adult bike, whether it's Walmart, whether it's the next level up in Dick's Sporting Goods, or whether it's maybe a little bit higher level REI or something like that. I mean, that's the process I went through when I started my adult cycling. I started with an Academy Sports Mongoose mountain bike, and all I was looking to do was exercise. I was just looking to do. I knew I wasn't going to go jogging. I knew I wasn't going to lift weights anymore. I was done with that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, I haven't ridden a bike in years. I could do that.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a $200 Mongoose, just rode it around the neighborhood every day for an hour. And after 3 weeks, the damn cassette blew up because it was a piece of shit bike.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that sucks. And I went down to Academy Sports And I railed on the manager. It's like, hey, this thing's got a 30-day guarantee. It fell apart. Well, we'll give you another bike. No, it's just going to blow up. Give me my money back. I got my $200 back. I went down to Sun and Ski, and boy, I upgraded and got me a $450 Haro V3. But you know what? That was enough mountain bike to get me riding knob hills and IDB and horseshoe and stuff like that. And, I mean, it got the ball rolling. And that put me on that 2-year knowledge adventure of, I have no idea what I'm doing. It takes 2 years to even start to get a sense of what you're doing when you go down a new hobby, recreation, pursuit, whatever. Even with all this information at our fingertips, you're going to go through a year and a half of getting bad information that you have to sift through to find the good information.
Yeah, even within cycling, it's like if you're a mountain biker and you want to start road biking, there's a whole nother world there that you have to figure out on your own.
Oh, that's the big well, and you've heard me rail on this before. The biggest thing that just gets under my skin is what's the best bike, and the people that just go, well, I have this, so it's obviously the best bike.
Yeah.
It's like
so personal.
It's like, come on, man. I'm glad you like your bike. Don't get me wrong, but don't.
Well, like I had a conversation with our buddy Donahue last night. He was on, I don't know the different levels of the Loft bike, but he was on a Loft, and he's had it for
gravel bike.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's had it for almost a year.
Okay.
And so I followed up with him last night. We were waiting for one of the guys was having some tire issues on the regular last night. And so at one point we were at Apogee or whatever it's called now, Datku, waiting for this guy to pump up his tire. And I asked Donahue, I go, so what do you think about that bike now? Do you have any regrets, or is there anything you wish you would have changed? Because when somebody first gets a bike, they're not going to tell you, oh, this sucks. I'm sad I bought it.
I made such a mistake.
Yeah. Everybody's in love with it when it's new. Same thing with cars and everything else, And
strippers. Whatever.
There's no buyer's remorse straight out of the gate, at least not outwardly. So I even made the comment in real time. I was just like, I just wanted to follow up now that you've been on it for, thousands of miles. Do you have any regrets or changes, or, did you wish you would have got a different model or size or Grupo or whatever? And he was, so I get what you're saying, because a lot of people will just, flex and go, well, this is the best bike, but how do you know? You haven't ridden everything.
I always defer to all the manufacturers are making good bikes now. Are some
carry on?
There isn't a. Are there bad bikes out there? Yes, I think every manufacturer is making a good bike here and there.
Yeah. The price point is where it's gotten out of control, I think.
But that's a whole nother level of debate, because there's plenty of bike snobs out there that say, well, unless it's, if you're looking at anything less than a $5,000 bike, it's not even worth looking at. It's like, that's ridiculous in my world.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. I defer back to the bike shop is the most important component. Find the bike shop you're comfortable working with, and they're going to point you to the right bike for your budget and what you're wanting to accomplish.
Yeah.
Most of the time. That said, I'm going to put a huge qualifier on it, because I think I'm wearing the same hat. Am I wearing my Macon hat?
Yeah.
We're spoiled here.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have so many bike shop options.
Well, and you mentioned it in passing and didn't even realize what you were saying when you're talking about, and I was able to ride Knob Hills and Horseshoe, and you named all these trails. We're also spoiled in that realm.
We're spoiled in the number of shops, the number of trails to ride, the number of disciplines we can ride around here, the number of organized events.
And the number of cyclists.
And the cycling community as a whole. We're spoiled here. This is what maybe 15 to 20% of the U.S. market has some similar experience.
Yeah.
The other 75 to 80% of the United States market is not in this situation.
Yeah, we are definitely like just blessed.
So I still say the bike shop is generally the best place to go. But yeah, if there's only one bike shop within 200 miles of you, and that bike shop sucks.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying these guys in Macon suck, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they were the only bike shop within an hour and a half of me.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty wild.
And it's like, that means your options are limited. I get that. And their product line and their approach to things is going to be skewed to what works for them,
right,
sort of thing. So that did. I mean, I know I keep harping on it, but that did kind of open my eyes that, particularly at that starter level, I think a big box type environment is not necessarily a bad thing. I think a proper Academy, Dick's, REI, something along those lines. I mean, Walmart would be ideal, but I don't think that will ever happen. You're never going to have a professional bike consultant in a Walmart.
No.
With
they got to start putting the forks on the correct direction first.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. I think it would behoove the bicycle industry to help offset the costs at some major box retailer to pay a decently educated bike specialists, group of specialists. Back in the days when I was selling advertising, the brands would have co-op advertising for the individual retailers. It's like, all right, Sherwin, I'm a paint dealer. I'm a hardware store. Sherwin-Williams gives me $200 a month to offset my costs for my Yellow Pages ads or my shopper ads or whatever else. If Trekker Specialized were to throw Dick's Sporting Goods or REI or whoever.
But they don't need to do that because they have their own flagship stores now.
But it's not working.
Yeah.
That's my point.
And I'm not sad about that.
People are still intimidated by those shops.
Yeah. So my advice, as with you, I'm a big supporter of local bike shop, and I'm going to contradict myself in the same sentence or same statement. My advice for people that have never ridden that want to get into riding is always you get more bike when you buy something used that's already depreciated. And I always say, find a bike that you think you like, that is at the top of your budget for now, that's already depreciated. Buy it, take it to your local bike shop, start that relationship, and then see if it's something you like. And then when you decide that bike is not enough for you, then you upgrade. And that way you don't take a huge hit. You can essentially rent a bike for $100 for 6 months and turn around and recoup your cost almost. That's been my patented advice for dozens of people that have turned to me.
I know it is.
Yeah.
And I agree it's the right advice for some. But
that's our market too. I mean, the gray market's huge here.
The gray market is huge here, and I'm one of those. I'm gonna vehemently disagree with that one because it's along the same lines of it makes all the sense in the world. Just make the first camper you buy a used camper.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
These people don't know enough about a bike to even make an educated decision about what's a proper used bike.
Well, no, I get that, but
it's what's a good deal? Well, hell, I mean, when I started out, I got a Mongoose because I remembered Mongoose being a good brand 30 years before, sort of thing. So it's like, well, okay, I think that's a good brand. It says some of the components say Shimano on them. I remember being told at one point, I need to look for Shimano on stuff.
Yeah.
It's you don't know what you don't know, and I think it's easier. I mean, you're not even going to know if the brake pads are worn on a bike if you don't know what you're doing yet, or if the tires are worn down or not. I don't disagree that with a little bit of educated assistance, or if you're the type that does know what, if you're mechanically inclined to begin with and do a lot of stuff with your hands, you're probably going to have a better chance of looking at something going, that's jacked up.
Right.
But it's somebody that is just your average cubicle worker that doesn't even have a ratchet set that, or a proper toolbox of any kind. I don't know. I don't know that that's the right approach. But again, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I think all of the avenues are appropriate. The main thing is just to find people or get people thinking about riding a bike when they are looking for something different, or when they are looking for exercise, or if they, again, I'm a camper, I'm a backpacker now, and maybe I'm not even aware that bike packing is a thing. And as a backpacker, it's like, man, I'm covering 10 miles a day and I'm worn out. I would really love to see what's 50 miles down the road. Oh, have you ever thought about bike packing? Bike packing? What the hell is bike packing? Well, let's just see what's 50 miles down the trail. It's some people that's going to be an eye-opening experience, and getting that word out to those people, whether it's bike packing, whether it's just riding gravel, whether it's mountain biking. I mean, mountain biking itself, I think the industry shot itself in the foot with the Red Bull mentality around mountain biking for the past 20 years. That's not necessarily attractive to people that don't have any ambition to be launching off 20-foot drops or anything like that. Some people may not even realize that you can just nonchalantly roll around in the woods and experience nature and that sort of thing, as opposed to...
Yeah, and that's why I have a hard time separating myself from these people that are not versed in cycling and stuff. I mean, like I said, I grew up on a BMX bike.
Well, but that's the industry's problem. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
You're not outside of the traditional industry mindset. You're very much in, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing for you. I'm not saying that's a negative. I'm saying that's what's just keeps this same cycle going round and round and round and round.
Yeah.
There needs to be a little bit of a disruption. There needs to be a fresh perspective on some of this. Or it's usually, in the past, it's been a forced, fresh perspective of an outside force that creates that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of almost a dumb luck sort of thing.
Well, like COVID was the best and worst thing to happen to cycling. I mean,
it was the best opportunity. I would expect the cycling industry would have had this generation, quite frankly, and they shot themselves in the foot with it because they were so wrapped up in that traditional N+1 model.
Yeah.
They thought all of these, they just rolled all those numbers. Oh, we just sold 800,000 new cyclists, whatever the numbers are.
Yeah.
Well, based on our traditional numbers, of those 800,000 new cyclists, 600,000 are going to buy another bike within a year. We better stock up, because they're going to double the price because they bought. And then so they went with their traditional. We're selling everything to cycling enthusiasts, passionate cyclists already, and they didn't understand that people don't become that passionate about cycling in 6 months.
Well, I mean, I think we're dealing, like, Devin and I sat down in the just heat of COVID, and when they were still trying to keep up with parts and bikes, when there was just, everything was backlogged, and, people were ordering stuff a year out and a year and a half out or whatever. And I was just telling him, I was like, dude, this is going to be catastrophic years from now.
Yep.
I said, what's going to happen is there's going to be an influx of new product, and then because the bike industry is going to catch up, and then they're going to overstep. They're going to be producing too much product, and then all these Johnny-come-latelys are going to flood the gray market, and then the new bike consumers are going to have so many options on the gray market that the regular industry is going to struggle. And I mean, literally everything that we discussed in that conversation is what's going on right now.
Sure.
I mean, I'm no Nostradamus or anything, but it was easy for me to see, and it is so perplexing that if it's easy for a dipshit like me to see how the bike industry seems like they're dumbfounded right now. Like everybody's trying to figure out, what are we doing? How to recover from this? When in my opinion, it just would have taken a little bit more foresight and introspect.
Every single cycling related company had the naysayers in their organizations that were ringing those bells. Hey, this is wrong. This isn't the direction to go. But we're back to, we talk about this in some capacity or another almost every episode. Mm-hmm. Just the corporate mentality of, we're not worried about 5 years from now, we're worried about next quarter. So if you're high up in that corporate structure and you're ringing that bell saying, whoa, let's put on the brakes here, you're out of a job. Is ultimately what it boils down to.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because everybody's just looking at the bottom line. They're not looking at the longevity of the whole thing.
I mean, there's a point that could be made that there's no reason to look long term because we don't know what is going to happen in the next 3 months, 6. And COVID's a perfect example of that. We can go, well, we could have been all prepared in the world and nobody knew this COVID thing was coming and everything's disrupted and turned upside down in 6 months, which is what happened. But
COVID just delayed the inevitable in the cycling industry. If COVID wouldn't have happened, we would have been having this conversation in 2021.
Well, again, going back to last week's episode and just I keep running into these parallels of where we were in December 2019 and January 2020, that it so much feels very, very similar then as now. And I feel like I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here because I'll be perfectly honest with you. January of 2020, I was feeling so good about the direction Spinistry was going, and we were on our upswing. 2019 was a good year for us. We were going in the right direction.
Yeah,
pieces were in place to really start to go the next. I had a plan. Things were working in the plan, and then COVID came about. Right? Okay, that wasn't part of my plan, but the general economy and the state of the bicycle industry was pretty close to what it is now, what it was then, and the Spinistry swing kind of seems to be going the right way. We're going in we have a plan. Things are clicking and things are going the right direction. Pieces are coming together. Nothing's ever perfect, but hey, a sense of direction, for lack of a better term. And now I'm paranoid. What the fuck's going to happen in March?
Yeah.
Enough of that naysaying.
Well, I mean, I was in the same boat. We started our FAM adventure January of 2020.
Right?
Yeah. And I was like, man, this is going to be fun. And as soon as we built momentum, it's like,
Jan and I were talking about that the other day. It's like, isn't that when Brad started? Was right that time too?
Yeah, we had our first dinner January of 2020, and we had no clue, all the hurdles that we were going to have to endeavor. But fortunately, we don't have to stock products that aren't consumable,
Right.
I can't imagine being in a bike shop retail situation where you deal with this fluctuating supply and demand, which has just been crazy to witness. Because I do have a really good relationship with my bike shop, and I literally have an actual relationship with the bike shop owner. So, I get kind of the behind the scenes scoop, of, hey, I can't even get, there was a point where nobody could get tubes.
Right.
And that's unfortunate from numerous scenarios, because a lot of times even and I don't mean this derogatory, but even your lowest end customer is going to come in for a tube. Even if they're going to change it themselves, they're going to pay retail for a tube. And if you don't have tubes, they're not going to come in. And when they come in and you don't have tubes, they're just going to turn around and walk out. If you have a tube, they're going to pick up a tube and probably look at other stuff, and maybe buy a water bottle or a tail light or whatever it is.
Right.
And so there was this whole just stacked out scenario that just complicated everything. And then it was, now we have too much shit. We can't sell it. It's really been a heartbreaker for me as someone that's been steeped in the cycling industry for decades. I mean, I worked in a bike shop when I was 14. I've been in and out of the bike industry, so to speak, for 35 years. So it's been a little bit. I don't have a vested interest. Like, I'm not a stockholder in any bike companies or bike shops or anything like that, but it's been very personal for me.
You've got a vested interest in the community as a whole.
Yeah. So it hit me pretty personal just to see the bike industry going through what it goes through.
Oh, it tears me up, inside and out.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I keep dwelling on this topic. There's got to be a way to make it better, but it's the classic, how do you define insanity? Just doing the same thing over and over and trying to expecting different results.
Well, that being said, it's January 2025.
Yes.
What does the next 4 quarters look like in the cycling industry? And then what does it look like from an event standpoint, in your opinion?
I think the cycling industry,
peaks and valleys.
I think, and again, we were talking about this from the get-go when we started this podcast. And what is this, episode 90? I think. I
don't even know. Yeah.
Something like that, somewhere close to that. We got to make it to 100 before we pull the plug, right?
Are we pulling the plug?
Well, we got to make it to 100 at least before we pull the plug. It might be 500 before we pull the plug.
Okay.
We definitely got to make 100, right?
Sure.
But from the get-go, we were talking about the bicycle industry in turmoil, and that I felt then it was going to be, we were getting close to bottom, but it was going to be a couple, 3 years before we started coming off the bottom. I think 2025 is still a dredging the bottom year for the most part. I think it's going to be 2026 before things start ratcheting up
I agree.
On a fairly regular basis. With this exception, again, going back to the introduction of the stump jumper, going back to the Lance effect, going back to COVID itself, these were all cultural changes that had an effect on the bicycle industry. Something can come out of nowhere that we don't know is out there yet that may change things. There's a fundamental shift based on something we're not aware of now. Without that fundamental shift, we're kind of where we're at with the current state of the industry through 2025 is my guesstimation.
One thing we didn't mention too is a lot of things, a lot of what shut down the N and the N+1 was stationary bikes, Pelotons and Zwift and a lot of that stuff, indoor training, so to speak. And it's come to my attention now that Zwift racing on television as a spectator sport has become a thing, which is so ridiculous to me.
Maybe not. I think Peloton was a missed opportunity by the cycling industry. I think that was a fantastic opportunity for the cycling industry to reach out to Peloton riders and say, hey, start taking your fitness building that you're doing and
putting it outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they missed
that if you're a Peloton owner and you can prove it, you get $100 off a new bike. Something like that. That wasn't, you're absolutely, I hadn't even thought about that.
Here we go. All right. If you're a Peloton rider, haven't been riding outdoors yet, but you think you might want to start riding outdoors, here's the deal I'm going to make for you. What are shiftlesslive@gmail.com. Send me an email.
Oh, they're already emailing.
They're calling already.
The lines are hot.
shiftlesslive@gmail.com. Tell me your Peloton story, and I will give you free entry to a Spinistry ride of some sort.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you're a Peloton owner exclusively, or, well, that's not going to be fair because the majority of our listeners are cyclists. So if they own a Peloton, they already had a bike. So
the people that listen are going to know people that ride Pelotons.
Yeah.
Here, let me give you an example. You asked about Harmony Hall. One of the best things that came out of this weekend at Harmony Hall, when Jan and I had scouted down there over the New Year's camping trip, we had found a cool place called Pivo's Ice House along the route. It's like, that looks like that'd be a nice place to host an event someday, or a club ride or something like that. So Saturday, while I was marking course, I swing by there, have a beer and a burger, meet the owner, Keith. Nice to meet you, sir. We had a fantastic conversation, and he is extremely amenable to being the Spinistry Honeycomb Hideout when we're down that way, and we'll host some rides and maybe an event out there someday.
Yeah.
He was telling me he's a Peloton rider.
Exclusively.
Yeah. And he had a friend that rides bikes, and the friend knew how much he was riding his Peloton and said, you really need to do the MS-150 with me. And he's contemplating that, but he hasn't been sold on that concept.
Yeah.
So, again, the Peloton riders have tangential associations with other cyclists and things like that. And that is an outlet that could draw more traditional bicycle sales, I believe.
Yeah.
But it also, and Keith and I started talking about the Spinistry rides and where we're riding. He said, that sounds really cool. I've never heard. I've seen bicycles go by, and I've always wanted to find a way to have a group of bicyclists just hang out here with us. It's like, well, I can make that happen.
That's the other thing is, getting into cycling is intimidating from the personal aspect too, because a lot of people, cycling is an individual sport, so to speak, but it's also a group activity, and cyclists can be intimidating.
Oh my God, yes.
That was an understatement. but I mean, if you're a, let's just call it 25-year-old person, and you want to get into cycling, like, there's so many barriers for entry. Forget the financial and technical aspect. It's, okay, you've got a bike. Like, okay, now what else do I need?
Right.
Because, it takes people either information or just
experience
to learn, okay, I need, a patch kit, CO2s, a tube, a plug kit, maybe a couple of basic tools. I don't want to get stranded 12 miles away from my house.
Right.
But also, where do I ride?
Right.
How do I get there? Can I ride from my house? Who do I ride with? Can I ride with people? And then just figuring all that stuff out is intimidating, especially for someone that got into cycling because it's an individual sport and they may or may not be introverted,
And a lot of cyclists are introverts.
Yeah.
A lot of cyclists are engineers and introverts.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, Rich Waldschmidt.
Is he an introvert?
I think he's, what do they call it? Is it a type B introvert? I don't know.
Yeah, you're going down a path that.
Yeah.
But no, I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. And no, we'll go back to Harmony Hall. So Harmony Hall is always good about bringing in newer people to this ministry flock. I mean, all of our rides always bring in new people, but the further away from North Texas we go, the higher percentage of newer riders,
Fresh meat,
so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's always a learning experience for me too, because I get caught up in the people around here know how we do things and how it works.
Right. You get comforted by just
and
the
then
regularity.
I'll go down there and I've got 4 or 5 people that are what's a ride with GPS? You know,
what do the arrows mean?
Exactly. Well, I've got that speech down pretty good.
I know.
But I mean, it's there's always people that show up at check-in. Did you send me the route? Well, yeah, I sent multiple emails that told you how to do it. Oh, I didn't get it.
These are the people that you have to baby hand, though. You have to kid glove because you want them to want to be there. You know, that's part of the intimidation factor right there.
It is. No, it is. It is. So I have to do a better job of accommodating that. But in turn, that in and of itself is a full-time job.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's, how do I better accommodate that transition? And I have plans in the works to do, but it doesn't happen at the snap of that's part of the 2025 plan going into 2026. Here are pieces I need to have in place to help accommodate those newer riders.
We touched on this, I don't know, maybe over a year ago, where there was an event where they offered a pacer.
Yes.
And I think that especially when you do an out-of-town event like that and you have an anticipation of a bunch of newbies, I think you should have like a pace ambassador, not just because and this is just me spitballing, but I think when you have people show up like that, it would be beneficial for you to have one person that could be a contact before the event to put these people's mind at ease, like help them with the route.
Oh, that would be fantastic, but it's not practical.
Yeah.
It's ultimately what we're up against there. And I agree. So my wish list for Spinistry events right now, my top tier wish list item is to have an on-site, for lack of a better term, social director.
Yeah.
I want my Julie from the Love Boat.
Yeah.
That's just steering the social show.
Right.
While I'm doing everything else.
Yeah.
Foster's
pretty outgoing. Why don't you utilize him? He's an extrovert.
Love you, Dave. Don't take that the wrong way. It doesn't
I love that guy,
I know he doesn't listen to a single word of this, so it's all good.
He would only criticize the production value.
But it's not. I mean, we're barely getting by to cover my truck payment from.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that from a boo-hoo perspective. Yeah. I want to grow to those levels, and I have ideas on how to get there, but I can't just snap my finger. Oh, we're doing that now.
Yeah.
So I have to build.
But it's also contradictory to what cycling is. You're going to have somebody, what's the word? Just babying all these people and entertaining them and making sure that they're coddled, so to speak, and then you're going to go do it by yourself. It's kind of, I don't know. I'm not articulating it well enough, but
see, and that's why I say that I think the social director aspect of it would come into play in that. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of experience before people know if they want to do more of it or not.
Right.
And it just takes 1 or 2 rides, and they're like, "Oh, I need to know more about how to do this before I go do 100 miles of that."
Yeah, Rich's story of his first Spinistry event is just blaring in my head right now.
Yeah.
Him showing up
on the old red road bike and
and falling on the gravel like in the parking lot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean,
that's way outside the comfort zone of a lot of people to even go to that level. A lot of people wouldn't have ever come back after that experience. But so you have the two ends of the spectrum. You have people that go take what they find on that first experience and go, "Oh, here's where I need to get better."
Yeah.
Or you have people that, "No, I never want to have anything to do with that again."
Yeah.
The social director, in my head, the way I see it is they would have the capacity to go, "Tell you what, why don't you hang out with these folks over here and follow along with Rich?
Yeah.
He's a good person to help you out."
Yeah.
And that's, they can be floating around as people are checking in. And I mean, you can see when people's pulling their bike out of the back of their car and don't know how to put the front wheel back on. Okay, this.
They're like doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Prairie dog.
Right.
Yeah.
So just a floater that's just kind of pointing people, "Hey, maybe you want to spend a little time with that person, or maybe you may not be ready for this. Maybe consider doing this today instead."
Yeah.
Just go to the water table and back.
Yeah.
And maybe the social director is on an e-bike and can go back and forth with the short route people and make sure everybody's correct. That's an ideal situation for me for a first step. And then somewhere down the road, maybe we do pace riders and stuff like that for different.
Yeah. That's
all down the road sort of thing.
Well, I was talking about someone to facilitate people's uneasiness leading up to the event. Like if there was a place for someone when they signed up to an event where it said, "This is my first Spinistry event," then they would immediately be put into a group with other individuals, and they would be coddled by someone that could.
Here is my
set them at ease.
transition goal along those lines, and your thoughts and feedback. And
I'm just spitballing, by the way.
No, I understand.
None of this has been pre-thought.
Your contributions, whether just from editorial perspective or if actual contributions, would be appreciated as well. Going back to the YouTube resource, I want to just start putting out content that addresses those issues and concerns and thought processes, and don't know what you're doing yet, or you have questions about Ride with GPS, or what's the right bike to do this, or what's the wrong. Just have some basic evergreen content that's always there.
Yeah.
And point people to that as a first level resource. Absorb this.
Yeah, like a little powder point. First Spinistry event, go here.
Something like that. Yeah. And just progressing content along those lines. But of course, it doesn't happen overnight. That's part of my 2025 plan, is to start building out that content as a general resource, and then take the feedback from people that, well, that was nice, but it didn't address this at all. Oh, okay. Well, that's another content piece I can create now. So thanks for that tip, sort of thing. So I don't think it's going to be practical for me to hire people to do those tasks as far as the social director or the ride leaders or the people that are actually communicating with people in advance of a Spinistry ride. But I can start putting together content that accomplishes that for people to.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like if there was just a resource page for first-time Spinistry events, I think that would probably set people.
Well, not even first-time Spinistry events. I'm taking it from the perspective of your first gravel ride. Here's things you need to know how to do, or don't start with it doesn't need to be Spinistry specific. I don't want it to be Spinistry specific, quite frankly, because we want it to be useful to everyone.
Sure.
That's in that position.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think it would benefit you to have a first Spinistry event paragraph too. Like,
I mean,
there's a little crossover. There's plenty of crossover, actually.
I think just the credibility of putting out useful content accomplishes that, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Is my perspective, but I could be off base.
So get back to the question. 2025.
Yes. Oh,
into 2026.
You asked about events too.
Yeah. What do events look like, and not just from a spinistry perspective, because we've.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean we've talked about like where we think events are going, and I think some of it is kind of wishful thinking from my part, at least. But I think. I think there's still some surprises in the wind, but also from the product perspective, like bikes, like what's going to be are there any surprises other than lighter, faster e-bikes and battery technology? There's a lot of good battery tech at Consumer Electronics Show. Did you watch any Consumer Electronics? Okay. That's a rabbit hole I went down.
I am shaking my head no.
Yeah. But, events like I said, not just spinistry events, like national level and local level, like where are events going? Because we've talked about XC is dying, and I think that's a factor of all of the cycling clubs going away, at least on a local level, because used to, if you had a cycling club, they had to put on a race.
That's a long time ago, though.
Sure.
Time ago.
But that's in the heyday when there was so many events, when there was Smurf Boy and blah, 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 all these different events.
I mean, again, that could be turned around to be part of what started the downfall of the cycling industry, though, as well, when it did become so structured and anal. And But anyway, I could very well be proven wrong, and I actually hope that I am. This is where pessimist Kevin is going to come out for 2025 regarding events. I think this is going to be a tough year for events, and I think particularly the national level events. But I think it's also going to be. I think it's going to be a tough year for. What's the best way to say it? Regional-ish events that have kind of been on autopilot, multi-year events that haven't had to work to keep their repeat customers.
Last year for Watchdog Challenge this year.
That's a good example of why I think that's going to be indicative.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not pretending I know. Do you know why this is the last year for the Watch It All Challenge? I know it's been declining for a few years. So,
so I'll tell you why I quit going to Watch It All Challenge, and this is once again just anecdotal on my part, but there was no atmosphere. There was no everybody stays dispersed. You have to find your own housing. You're either staying in a cabin or, tent camping or staying in a VRBO or Airbnb or something. Everybody's dispersed.
Right.
There's no, I hate to say party atmosphere, but there's no cohesiveness to the event at all. You show up, you mill through for registration the day before and pick up your packet and stuff. And then, they do the pancake breakfast before. And then you start the event and then you finish and everybody packs up and they leave pretty much. And so it doesn't really feel like an event,
I think that's probably closer to the norm for most events. There's definitely exceptions. I'm not saying there aren't, but I think most events, that's kind of the structure generally. I mean, even Unbound, SBT, and things like that. They're providing the common get together point,
right?
But obviously, if you have 1,000 people or more, there's just that many more pockets of groups of people that start to create
Sure.
some mini cohesiveness. Once you get below 1,000 people, once you definitely get below 500 people, get below 200 people, that really starts to shift that dynamic of cohesiveness, for lack of a better term. Again, I don't know why the Ouachita Challenge, why this is their last year. I think,
it's a volunteer heavy event, and just like it's hard to find volunteers. Especially, they do it because it brings money into the community. I feel, I don't know if that's the absolute, but they have stations everywhere.
But is that a byproduct of all the new stuff going in with around MENA and stuff like that?
It's possible.
Is it? Well, there's we know that there's going to be major events and promoters and doing these $250 sign up fees, but that have all these other things attached to them. Is it a byproduct of? Make no mistake, we used to do Ouachita Challenge because it was a complete change of pace of what we were used to doing.
Yeah.
But now there's so much going on all throughout Northwest Arkansas that, I can get my change of pace and go to Northwest Arkansas any weekend I want to and have my change of pace sort of thing as a Texan.
Yeah.
In the glory days of Ouachita Challenge, fair to say, over half of the entries were from Texas?
Yeah, and I was going to mention that too, back in the day, Ouachita Challenge was like a rite of passage almost. It's like people doing their first century at Hotter Than Hell.
For this scene that we're familiar with.
But I do have it on a good source that tells me that someone else is going to be resuscitating Ouachita Challenge as soon as it falls off.
Well, that was my guesstimate anyway, that it's going to come back under a for-profit model of some sort, would be my guess. But probably also in conjunction with all that other MENA stuff that's going on in the works with all of that.
Well, my rumor mill has it that Silamos Revenge is also going to return.
But just because they're coming back doesn't mean they're going to be successful.
No, I totally agree.
And I'm not saying that to be a naysayer for the events themselves.
No.
I'm saying I think that event environment is going to be super tough going forward, extremely tough going forward. And I think a big part of that right now, we're back to the economy.
Yeah.
People are going to choose one or two, probably closer to one, bucket list event each year that this is my traveling event for this year.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to be going to 3, 4, 5, a half dozen of them. People are going to stay more. I'm seeing a trend towards people staying even more local for their riding endeavors than we've ever been experienced with. We come from it being the norm. It's like, well, let's hop in the car and drive 6 hours for a cool weekend, sort of thing. Do it every weekend? No, but you do it a few times a year with the right group of folks. There's not many people that are doing that anymore. When Spinistry first started out, we were getting tons of people that were traveling from San Antonio, from Kansas, from Colorado to do our rides because there was nothing else out there like that. And as the gravel scene has gotten big, there's a gravel event somewhere every weekend.
Yeah.
And within 3 hours of most any major metropolitan area, there's a gravel event almost every weekend, and these people aren't traveling to them.
But I think the riddle is in the question. That's the problem, is there's too many events. If there was only 6 events a year, and I know that's ridiculous to even think, but if there wasn't an event every weekend, then the attendance is more dispersed, No,
I don't. I don't disagree with that fundamental logic. Yes, that's true. If the pie is only so big, You can only cut it. So I don't
Yeah.
disagree with that. But if the pie's bigger,
Yeah.
then you can care for more events.
Yeah.
So what, if you have if you open the new pizza joint
Yeah. And somebody opens up one next to you.
and somebody opens, well, hey, let's take turns. Tell you what, I'll be open on Friday. You be open. It ain't gonna work that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's like when we were driving down to Houston this past weekend, we stopped at the Buc-ee's in Madisonville. Big mistake, by the way. I hate Buc-ee's. But it occurred to me as we were getting back onto the interstate, on the other side of the interstate, there's 2 small gas stations.
Yep.
And I'm like, my first thought was, Buc-ee's has got to be killing them. But then I remembered that Buc-ee's has been there for like 10 years, 8-10 years. And so I started thinking, well, and Buc-ee's is going to attract who Buc-ee's attracts. Mm-hmm. There's some people that just want to pull in and get gas and go in and get a soda and not deal with
They don't want to deal with the dipshits blocking the aisles in Buc-ee's.
Yeah. And so I was like, I had that same thought, immediately.
I'm the Sefco across the interstate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? My gas is actually a little cheaper.
Yeah.
And my beer's a little colder.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the Spinistry model in a nutshell there. I don't need to be Buc-ee's. I don't want to be Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
But there's room for Buc-ee's. But there's also room for the Sefco across the interstate as well. Unfortunately, a lot of the Sefcos across the interstate want to be Buc-ee's, and they're never going to compete there. And then if a Tim Hortons happens to open across the street from a Buc-ee's, who knows what's going to happen then?
Tim Hortons? Who the hell is Tim Hortons?
You've never heard of Tim Hortons?
Is that a Georgia thing?
It's a Canadian thing.
Oh. How the fuck would I know a Canadian convenience store?
It's almost a pop culture reference in general. So most people are somewhat familiar with the Tim Horton label. Or maybe not. Maybe I assume too much.
How do you know about Tim Hortons? Are you a frequent Canadian traveler?
That's what I'm saying.
Do you even have a Canadian tuxedo? Do you own a denim shirt?
It's very much a pop culture reference. So
in what circles? Am I too old for this reference? Am I too young for this reference?
Maybe too young. I wouldn't think so, but possibly.
Is it like a Stuckey's?
It's like a Starbucks and a Buc-ee's kind of rolled into one sort of thing. Tim Hortons coffee is okay. You know, Little Blatt's Blue, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Canadian beer.
Okay. Tim Hortons is Canadian coffee.
Yeah.
It's anyway. I've been to one Tim Hortons in my life. Okay. But I was familiar with it.
In Canada?
I believe it was Buffalo area.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But anyway.
You caught me off guard.
I understand. Really derailed things. Speaking of derailing things, how'd you like my audio edit job on that? Did you listen to last week's episode?
I listened to part of it.
Okay. All right.
I did notice you took your fumbling out, so it made my comment irrelevant.
What fumbling? I didn't take anything out.
Then what are you talking about?
Oh, just the
maybe AI took it out.
It didn't take my fumbling out, but it took out the drum table resonance that was throughout the whole damn
of me pushing my button or whatever.
Just everything that was going on was just totally saturated in the audio. It was terrible. When we'd run into not even that bad of a situation back in the day, it literally took me a week one time to clean up the audio enough to make it presentable.
Yeah, I saw you put it out the same day, and I was like, holy shit, Kevin.
This time it was like 5 minutes of AI.
Yeah.
I had to do a transition, though. I had to do, I think the opening section was the raw audio, because when I do the AI filter, it takes out our intro music. So I needed the intro music and me talking over the intro music. So that part was raw cut. And it had a little bit of the drum table effect. And then I cut in the cleaned up version when Caleb started talking. And it did a fantastic job of just pressing a button, and it cleaned up all that stupid drum tables. Thanks, Caleb. I do miss him, though. He got my hopes up.
Wait, who?
He got my hopes up. He promised last week he was going to be here.
Yeah.
And then he sent us a text at 11 last night or something like that.
He told me last night, he said, when the United States government puts an appointment on your calendar, you go, okay.
Oh.
Like they literally populate his calendar with his meeting. So I was like, okay, I guess that's an out. So.
Caleb would make a good Industry social director.
Caleb's got there's not enough fire for how many irons he has. You do not understand.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's simplify his life. You don't need to pay your bills, Caleb. Just do the Brad and Kevin thing.
He is so overwhelmed, like on a regular basis. Like I ridiculed him last night because he still hadn't responded to our group text of what the plan was today to record. And I was like, dude, how come you don't respond to the group text and say in or out? It's just that simple. And he goes, well, I will. I got sidetracked or whatever. And I'm like, and he goes, last night before we left, we're all sitting around. We fucked around for 45 minutes, and he didn't respond. And I go, well, why don't you just respond? He goes, oh, I will when we get to East Side. And he didn't. And then when we got back, I go, hey, at least let Kevin know what's going on. Like, it's not my spot to say, hey, Caleb's out, And he goes, oh, I will when I get home. And I go, dude, what? But he has shit coming at him from every direction.
Right.
Man, that poor guy.
He's probably got a return messages schedule that he sticks to.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm way too chaotic for all that.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Organic.
All about the organs.
So, events, smaller events.
I think event promoters are going to have a rough year for cycling events. Across the board. Doesn't mean everyone's going to have a rough year, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think for people that had it, for lack of a better term, fairly easy the last few years, that might have to work to drum up riders, they may not have any sense on how to do that. And it's like, there were a lot of people that thought they knew everything there was during COVID on how to sell bikes, on how to sell campers, on how to
right. Yeah, the model has been rewritten.
Well, it was rewritten. It's like all you had to do to sell bikes then was have bikes.
Yeah.
So that there wasn't any marketing genius involved in that. Oh, I have a bike shop full of bikes.
Yeah.
I can sell bikes. There was the last few years. There's been some of that with gravel events as well, where I have a gravel event. Oh, people are going to show up. It doesn't work that way anymore. And definitely that has changed the last year tremendously. But I think it's going to change even more going forward. I think road rallies are going to have a very hard time this year.
Yeah.
Mountain bike racing, I
said it probably over a year ago. I think multi-service events are the ones that are going to start to rise to the top. I
think yes and no. I think we agree on the premise for different reasons, though. I think those are going to be an up and coming thing the next few years. Mm-hmm. More so from the proximity basis that I was talking about before. People aren't wanting to go far from home.
Yeah, but you can put on a multi-surface event pretty much anywhere.
Exactly. No, that's what I'm saying.
But it also attracts more people.
It doesn't. See, that's the thing. We're weirdos.
Yeah.
Ramblers are weirdos.
Guilty.
I think more people would really like rambling than are aware of it even existing right now.
Yeah.
I think it will click with a lot of people once they find it. But I don't think people even consider it right now,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. And I think rambling is that's actually at the core of my end model. I think ramble type riding, I think that is the cycling industry
Yeah.
salvation right there, where people can get on a do anything gravel adventure bike and just roll out of their garage and explore.
I almost feel like that whole term and thought process originated in our group. And it may have happened simultaneously across the globe, but the term rambling and going on a ramble and doing multi-surface rides has been at the core of our group for
20 something years.
a long time. But it's awesome for that term to be, it's succinct.
Were you? Did you do Ben's Odyssey Road?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
That was
probably one of the first events like that.
That was the first event that I
Were you on that ride?
I was.
With Mike Bond and
Yep.
and
And
Michael Wilder and Drum
and the tornadoes while we're hanging out under.
Yes. And then riding the railroad track for like 3 miles or some shit.
I was on my Yeti 575.
Yeah. God, I didn't realize you were there. We rode through, was it Campion
So
trails?
that
and it was flooded?
I lost you guys at the levees because I was on that 575 slogging through the wet levees,
Yeah.
which the 575 was not the right bike for that situation. And so where we came off the levees and I guess the interstate railroad track confluence thing,
Yeah.
I could not follow what Ben was wanting us to do.
There were no Spinistry arrows.
There were no Spinistry arrows on that one.
That was a big day on the bike. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I made it to the end.
Yeah.
Where did we end on that? I can't even
at
remember.
Thornton's house.
We can't-
Over off when he lived off of Ferguson.
Man, I can't. Yeah, no. That's. I mean, yeah. I did. That was my first ramble event, but that was the Odyssey, and he wasn't. I think we were using ramble as a term there. He wasn't real receptive to it though.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That was the foray that just got me hooked. So,
agreed.
yeah.
Agreed.
I was like, oh, we don't have to just ride mountain bikes, or we don't have to just ride gravel, or we don't have to just ride road. Like, we strung together so much shit,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah,
And
it was an eye opener to me. There's no
Yeah.
doubt. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, obviously, that was a precursor to our Monster Cross ride and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mike Smith has a great term for Thornton especially back in those days. And I liken you to this in the same regard, in that he always referred to Thornton as a carnival barker, because he was always throwing out all these ideas like, hey, let's go do this. Let's do this. Strap everything to your bike and let's ride here, you know, and it was either, nah, I don't want to do that, or, oh yeah, that sounds fun. You know, and Smith was like, he just keeps throwing it out there, you know, like a carnival barker. Come throw this ball into this basket,
Right.
you know? And I think you are in the similar fashion, like you're trying to make it work, you know? But I love that you have continuously morphed what is going on. And I think it's fitting that we come back to a ramble style ride. You know, just like Watchdog Challenge has changed their model a lot in the last, call it 5 years, whereas now it's not. I don't even know what the format is this year, but it was tour on Saturday, race on Sunday. That was the old format, and then it was race on Saturday, gravel on Sunday. I think I can't even remember now. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, it used to be tour Saturday, race Sunday, and now it's tour race Saturday, gravel Sunday, right?
Yeah, I think. I don't know.
I think that's what I saw.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to Ben being the carnival barker, I don't know if you're aware of it or not or remember it, but back when I first started Spinistry, I tried like hell to recruit Ben to be my social director then. It's like, I just want to be the guy in the background.
Yeah.
I want, and this is where I shot myself in the foot because he took it the wrong way. I said, I want you to be my David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
And Ben's perception of my statement was that I want somebody up there to be a clown and wild and crazy. It's like, when I was saying, I want somebody to be my personality front man.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And
in the meantime, though, we were both like whispering stuff in your ear, like you should do this, you should do this,
well,
you should do this, you know.
And that was the other part of it. You know, of course, Ben was getting just bent out of shape that I was marking course, providing GPS files, putting water tables out there. Yeah. He's like, that's not the way it works. Yeah. It's like, that's the way my stuff works.
Well, if you're going to build the community, you have to facilitate.
No, he was perfectly happy stranding people out in the pouring rain surrounded by tornadoes. Yeah. And go down the railroad tracks for 3 miles.
But his thought process has never been catered to the lowest common denominator.
I understand that.
You know.
And I told him that from the get-go. It's like, I get where you're coming from here.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm doing here. But you know what, Ben? It's going to create more people that want to do it the way you're talking about.
Right.
They can't go from zero to there. They have to bridge that gap one way or another. And ultimately, that's the whole crux of the cycling industry is you have to bridge those gaps. There are very, very few people that go from nothing to the extreme.
Right.
They have to build to the extreme. And the whole cycling industry right now is just built around start at the extreme.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we've rambled enough.
With our mouths.
Yes. Unless you have something important you want to touch on.
I have nothing important other than the fact.
Okay.
This is top of mind for me.
Go
it has
for it.
nothing to do with bikes. But we are about to get a new puppy.
I can't see. So much sunshine. Good grief. What is that?
It's a dog.
I know it's a dog.
It
looks lavish, but not.
It's a black German Shepherd chocolate lab mix.
Okay.
It's a Kenny Cherry puppy.
Oh, it's one of Kenny's. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. Now
I'm super excited. I wish I could make it to get it today.
Why can't you?
Because I got to go shopping. I've got a dinner this weekend.
Do you want me to go get your dog for you?
No.
I'll go get the dog.
No, I want to be there. I want to be there. Plus, I don't want to have a brand new puppy going into the weekend with the dinner. You know?
It would be the hit of the. No, I get it. Do we have a name yet?
No.
Okay. Good.
But all black dog. We as a family have kind of an understanding that it's going to start with an L.
Well, yes.
Yeah, because all of our dogs start with L. We were toying with names last night. I like Lazarus. That's what I'm thinking, but it's kind of a weird name.
Licorice.
But
you hate black licorice, right?
No, I don't mind it.
No, I may.
Some people are diametrically opposed to black licorice.
I thought I remembered you being one of those that was in the hate black licorice camp.
I can take it or leave it.
Understood. I get it.
I have to be in a mood, and even then, it's a very finite thing for me.
Understood. All right. So when are you picking up?
Monday.
The L dog.
Monday. Beautiful dog.
How old are they now?
I want to say maybe a month or two.
No, they're older than that.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, I have no idea.
I know it's been.
I know Baker has one, and that's when I met Baker's dog, Jax, I think is his name, at the Big Pig Christmas party, and I was like, oh my God, where do I get one of these? So it's been cooking for a little bit.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
I'm a dog lover, so
Really?
yeah.
You're catching me off guard there.
I'm surprised none of my dogs have been out here to greet us. But
I got some Lucy and Lucky Love.
yeah,
I haven't seen Luna though.
I told Paula, I said we should call it Luca. I said that would just screw everything up. Because
That would be a mess.
that's like Lucky, Lucy,
Yeah.
Luna, all combined in one.
Well, so it has to be LU, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't have to.
I don't know. Might have to.
Lucius was the other name I was thinking of, but that doesn't just roll off the tongue.
No.
And it means light, which is ironic because the dog is black.
Dark. Yeah.
So, I think it's a beautiful day to go ride your bike, though, and get a puppy.